And we got two great guests in studio here this morning as we talk with Matt Melendez. Matthew, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You have with us John Muehleisen, and John is working closely with you and has been in town over the past weekend. How was your performances over the weekend?
Gosh, so great.
Oh, nice.
So great. We had a pretty packed hall at St. Ed's yesterday. The hometown crowd.
Yeah?
Always fun to play for. And it's been a morning of, again, email and text messages from the orchestra players from Seattle talking about how much they love coming to Shelton.
Wonderful.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, just that's just really the best.
I
yeah.
like hearing that.
Yeah.
On Friday, just in some housekeeping here, we are opened up this past Friday. Jim Morrell was in from the Community Foundation. We opened up the phone lines to the Give Local campaign, and we had quite a handful of people calling to support your nonprofit.
Yes.
And I don't know if anybody talked to you, but you got the $100.
We did. I saw it, and I was on my way to Seattle. I was on my way dropping my son off at Evergreen, and then straight to Seattle for rehearsal that night. So I missed all of it, or whatever, until I got the alert like, hey, you got the giving bonus. So yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of people out there that really appreciate the work that you guys do. John, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're working closely with Matthew on some projects. Was this past weekend's performance as part of that, or were you just kind of getting a lay of the land?
Well, I'm more getting the lay of the land, and I've wanted to hear his group for a long time. And, we had this, so I thought, we talked and I said, let's just come on out to Shelton. I've never been to Shelton, and, I came down the hill on the other side of town, and I thought, this is gorgeous. This is fantastic.
A great town.
So it was a chance to come here, a chance to hear them do the Haydn Creation, which is a piece I absolutely love, and they did such a fantastic job with it. It gave me a chance to hear the choir, because I'm writing a piece for the choir, and we're going to have a small ensemble of maybe like string quartet and double bass and piano and some percussion.
Nice.
And then, of course, we're taking it across the country.
That's exactly right. So you were able to come down the hill, maybe get some inspiration as you start putting this piece together. For folks who are just joining us, may not have heard, Great Bend has been asked to head over to Carnegie Hall and play this year, and Matthew has worked with John now to create a piece for us, and it's kind of focusing on all that's great about the Northwest.
It is. That was because, and particularly our community. So John and I have done a lot of work with other organizations over the past several years. And so when the opportunity came up, I really wanted us to be able to perform a piece that celebrated our community. And so, and I knew John was the absolute right person for this. So for this weekend, I wanted him first to come and just get a sense of like what this community is like and what this community has made possible for me. So mission accomplished there.
Yeah.
But also just sort of we did a pre-concert talk yesterday talking a little bit for the first time about what we're planning and why. And the primary thing, and it's funny, this is not the way I was talking about it a few weeks ago, but particularly after yesterday, I think this is the way I need to talk about it. Because in visiting with the choir and my board about it over the last couple of weeks, I realized that this is where it's come to. Like, I wanted to say like what I love about our community, which is this, and this is not how we think of ourselves, I don't think, but how welcoming this community is. I mean, and it's certainly been my experience for the last 20 years. And it's funny because even talking to the choir is like, oh, really? You think? I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, well, think about this, think about this, think about this. And they're like, oh, I'm like, this really defines like who we kind of are. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it's not part of our brand. It's not how we think of ourselves. And so I really like that. So the piece's primary sort of the germ around which everything is growing is that the local tribes, when there were first contacts with Vancouver's men first exploring the area, the local tribes sang to them. They sang typically what we would guess would be a song of welcome, and then communicated and now sang back. And there's this collection of letters talking about all these young sailors in the late 19th century talking about singing to whatever. And I just loved the idea that these two elements of our community, the First Peoples and then Westerners that moved in or whatever, first came together in song. I just loved that. So for years, I've been wanting to do something that celebrated that because I think that still informs the character of our community in a great deal way. So that's the beginning of the piece.
Oh, that's a great story.
And as a composer, that's a great opportunity to play on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that germ, that idea of welcome, and expand that across a much larger piece, not just singing back and forth to one another, but to create this metaphor of how we can be as a community, not just here, but throughout our state, our country, the world.
Sure.
And, I started doing a little bit of research, taking this idea of the welcome song a little further, and there's a lot of cultures that have welcome songs. I think we, as a culture, as the modern American culture, have lost that notion. But to greet one another in song, that's the beauty of music. Music transcends cultural boundaries in many ways.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I want to do with this opening of the piece, which will be called Welcome Song, is I want to use not just one of the Salish welcome songs, which I've actually found one that we're going to use, and then I'll use some kind of an English folk song. But I started looking around at other cultures because I want to expand this. And one of the things I like to do is make things universal. Take something that's kind of local and then universalize it. And what I found was there's all these different folk songs from around the world, Asia, England, Africa, etc., that all share the same scale. It's called the pentatonic scale. I mean, it's kind of the folk song scale that we would know, you would recognize it.
All right.
And I thought, all these cultures, all these peoples, they developed independently from one another, but yet they share this thing in common. And I thought that's a really beautiful metaphor for our common humanity, and that we can transcend kind of other kinds of borders and bring that together.
What are some other ways, as you're composing this, how much time are you going to spend in the area? I mean, just sitting there, or do you come in for a day and meet with folks and then go back, or is it a lot of historical research that you're looking for? How does this all play out?
Well, yes to all, yeah. So I would love to spend more time here. The thing about Matthew is he's done a lot of thinking about this already. And so he's a great resource for me. We've had many long phone conversations, which are just we kind of fire each other up about the project. And I have to say he's a wonderful collaborator. And we get each other going, and the piece has evolved that way. So he's done a lot of this research, which has been a great help to me. And so I would absolutely love to come back more often.
Yeah, definitely. And this is, the opportunity here for us as a community is not just to have this piece that then will go on.
Yeah.
And we're designing it so that it's appropriate also for high school choirs and college choirs. So we really hope it'll have a life going forward. And that's particularly, again, why we choose John, because John's really good at that.
Yeah.
He tends to do that a lot. But additionally, it's an opportunity to show the community, this is what this process looks like. Here's a living composer. Here's what we do. Here's how this comes together or whatever. And so I kind of want to show that as much as possible over the next couple of months. And so, because there are things that happen that if you just hear the finished piece, you don't really get the journey. So like 2 weeks ago, we were on the phone and John was all excited. And so the first movement of the piece that that welcome song moment leads into is a setting of the Emma Lazarus poem that is at the base of the Statue of Liberty.
Okay.
And so John's just like, but he's playing with this pentatonic melody. That's the Salish song of welcome. And he's like, if I just take those two notes, I have a really cool wave theme. And then I can sort of play that out. So you get this visual imagery through the music of the boats arriving and yeah. And so there's so much to unpack there. If to do that over the course of months as we lead up to it, I think is a real opportunity to get the whole community involved and see this is what we get to do. And again, I wanted to make sure whatever we did at Carnegie Hall cast a spotlight back on this amazing community.
Yeah.
And so the more we can sort of lay that groundwork and show people why we're making the decisions and listen for this because that's a little reference to this or whatever, the more we can sort of, I think the more satisfying it'll be. So
Very
we'll do
cool.
then the Carnegie Hall performance, and then we'll come back and do June 1st and 2nd performances here in Shelton.
Very
Very
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
That's
That
quite the
is
process. It'll be
amazing.
fun to
It
follow
is.
you along.
Yeah, and one of the other things about this is this notion of welcome, which was the seed for this whole piece. I started doing research across a lot of different cultures too, because one of the things we're going to do is we're going to make this kind of a global piece, right? And so what I discovered was that every culture has something about how we treat the stranger, right? The foreigner amongst us. And all of them say, you love the stranger, you welcome the stranger, you give to them, right? And I think it's safe to say that we don't always do that.
Sure.
And so we thought this would be a great message to kind of sing out into the world.
Very cool.
Well, yeah, and again, I think we're really good in this community of recognizing that we have more in common than we don't.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
so
Right,
that's,
right.
yeah.
It's a
Very
great model.
cool. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Matthew Melendez and John Muehleisen. We have a big thing coming up in a couple of weeks, don't we?
We do. We have the big thing that Jeff and I have together is December 15th. The Great Bend Chorale and the Youth Chorale, the kids, will be on the Lady Alderbrook for 2 hours, leading Union's first lighted boat parade. We'll be singing for 2 hours, and we'll be broadcasting that via FM transmitter to the entire Great Bend community around. And you can get tickets and be on the boat with us. And there's information at the Great Bend website. Yeah. And we also, the week before, we have a really great event with the Hardware Distillery as well. We're just doing cocktails and carols. So they're putting together a custom cocktail menu. Hood Canal Events is putting together a really fabulous holiday dessert menu. And we're just going to go to the distillery and lead Christmas caroling for 2 hours. So I'm kind of excited about that. Yeah.
Very fun.
Very cool.
Very fun.
Matt and John, good to see you guys. Nice to meet you, John. And
Thank you. Nice to meet you
I
too,
get a
Jeff.
sense that we'll see more of you throughout the next couple of months.